won't be here, Sarah's on the way. So may I call this meeting to order? Roll call.
Anderson? Here.
Daniels?
Here.
Here.
Anderson?
Here.
Here.
Okay, in order to facilitate this, is that better?
Okay, I move to approve the agenda.
Yes. But I'm wondering, does this help you here? Because we understand there's a hearing issue in here, so if you are having trouble, please hold up your hand. We'll try to share the mics. And so, yes, I would like a motion to approve the agenda. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous? Aye.
Kids all over town tonight, so that's just
Where we're at.
Okay, we will move forward for the public hearing of replacing the 12-year-old synthetic turf on the football field. So is there anyone who is?
You want to speak for or against the proposed turf proposal?
Okay.
That now.
Anyone who wishes to speak for or against the proposed turf replacement? You may speak now. Okay. Okay. So we'll close the communication. All right, so we will actually be discussing this item later in the agenda. So do we have anyone who would like to speak to the board on any issues tonight? If you do, be good if you give your name, your address, and normally we limit you to 5 minutes. Is there anyone who has any comment? Okay, thank you. So the next item is information for future meetings that will be covered in the next meeting in January. And so I would direct everyone on the board to examine that data and forward any questions to Carrie, Dr. Schluter. If you have questions, and we'll discuss it then at the first January meeting. The sixth item is facilities updates. So I don't know who gets the opportunity to visit about this. Bill?
I'll go first.
Okay, you might want to pick up a mic or.
Everybody hear me?
Yes.
So this would be for Urbandale Elementary number 1. So sandstone management, the grading contractor, completed installation of the 18-inch rock building pad, and also graded at Pro Shop 72nd. Currently working on grading at north and west parking lot. Jensen Builders, who's doing the concrete for that project, poured the approach at 72nd Street. So we're out of the city's way over there now. Hill Attack Crew is sent to them. Is moving their equipment on site tomorrow for that pier installation. The PLR is currently reviewing the shop drawings for that, and we're hoping to get that started towards the end of this week, start putting the pier in. Which turned out a little better to their original plan for next week. Calvin Steel, structural steel for areas A and B are fabricated and stored in council level. They're working on steel for C and D, the next 2 areas. The next few is kind of based on the material things. You've seen the goals for a lot of this stuff. Wells Concrete has a hollow core stuff all fabricated and ready for shipment, stored in Minnesota. Clark Glass has all the aluminum for storefronts and curtain walls stored in Des Moines here. And then Ideal Floors has flooring materials purchased. That came through on the last day, actually the one that's still in. But so they have that lot stored in town too. So things are going good. Weather's helped us out. A couple cold days, we're still working, but weather looks good for the next week or That's it on that job.
Great. Do we have any clarifications, questions from anyone? Okay, so we're moving to the action items. This will be our audit for last fiscal year. Presentation from our audit firm.
Our audit firm is presently giving a presentation at Waukee and will be here as soon as he's done with that. So like I said, we could probably work him in, if that's okay.
Sure.
So if we move to the second action item, which is the SBRC application for increasing enrollment, open enrollment, and ELL beyond 5 years, that is an item that is up for action. And we were instructed by the DE, the Valley Department of Education, to wait until the count was finalized. They had some issues with their computer program for their count process this year. But we do have those numbers finalized, and so the amount that we would be requesting from the School Budget Review Committee for those 3 items would total $599,803. And that application is strictly for spending authority. The district would have to levy for the cash at the time when they certify their budget in the spring.
I move to approve the SBRC application. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Okay, so our next item will be to set public hearing dates for our calendar for next year. And you can see there's items, you can see there are a number of proposals and considerations. Dr. Carlisle is here, who has been coordinating this effort. So are there any questions, clarifications on any of those calendar proposals?
Move to approve the public hearing date for the calendar. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
The next item is approving the key assumptions for this fiscal year. Along with that, I was able to hand out, it's got a blue cover, and it is the capital projects plan. So we'll just look at both of those things right now. The key assumptions are items that we use to guide us in making decisions as we go forward through the year, and they take into account things like our tax rate, the fund balances that we want to keep, and the number of personnel that we may be hiring throughout the year. Keeping the tax rate at a level amount was a goal that the board had early on, and that they used when they promoted the $59 million bond issue, general obligation bond issue. And along with that, this facility 10-year planning facility report that you have, if you turn to the very last page in that I've given copies to the board, you'll see all of the capital projects funds that we have. That's Fund 39, 33, and 36. And the revenue that they're generating is taken into account in the top part of the sheet. And in the body of the sheet, we have various key projects that have been identified, including elementary number 1, elementary number 2, the fitness center, the high school HVAC project, and others. At the bottom of the report, you can see that even taking into account the things that are earmarked above, we still have stable balances that are projected out for the next 10 years. We talked to our administrators and our supervisors about various projects that might be what we would consider a hot topic that would get listed. For example, The turf upgrade is a good example of that, or roof repair, or high school parking lights. Those have been identified at some point, and if they are not addressed in the year that we allocate the funds to, then we simply move the project to the next year. So in the first column, where we see fiscal year 19 budget, that is what the board acknowledged and agreed to for as a guidance for last year. The column next to that shows how we actually spent those funds based on the budget, and then we have the projections for this year. So if the board would like to consider either acknowledging or approving both of these items as part of our guidance for this year, that would be entertained at this time.
I guess I get a little nervous about having SSA at 2%. Maybe that's pessimistic,
Do you feel like it should be higher or lower?
lower.
Lower?
But again, I don't think, I'm certainly not an expert at it. It's just something that has jumped out to me. And then I've got a question about, this has worked so well, I think, for our purposes for the past few years, but with us having 3 teacher FTE net change in 21, do you think it's conservative? I mean, do you think it would be conservative and beneficial for the district to budget maybe even a smaller net change for the years? Sorry, let me back up. We go from adding 3 in 21 to none in the next years. I feel like that's not gonna happen. We're gonna end up adding some. But is it enough of a financial investment that it would really change this whole document? I guess that's the question I have. Do we really think we're not gonna have a net change in FTEs after 21?
I think when so Superintendent Bass
Yeah.
and Warren Tribe and I met with Garrison Fair before class 5, and when we discussed the 21 year, we specifically had 3 positions that we knew were above and beyond just the net change of people leaving. So we addressed that. I think it's difficult to project out those specifics. We tried to go with what we actually knew that had been vetted, and I think Superintendent Bass can speak to that. But those were figures we actually knew. And I think that if you look at what this document has done, and we have been pretty conservative on the revenue part of it, but try to be realistic about the expenditure part. We feel like it's done a good job of keeping us within our goals for unspent authorized budget and financial solvency ratio. Mr. Bass, do you have anything to add to that, or?
Historically, we zero out, but we also realize the next line down that there's those that we usually should fill that way as well. And then we only bring to the board what we know basically we run through the plan. It's in the visit, like last month you approved it. We ran that through the process to see the impact.
And I would say, before you joined the board, we had staffing projections as we consolidated the buildings. So,
Oh, yeah.
so there should be built-in
Yeah.
efficiencies as we go forward, because obviously we'll be able to economize a bit and have it be more efficient. So I think that probably is realistic to the best of our ability.
Okay.
There are other factors. If somehow we got a huge new subdevelopment out on the west side, obviously you can't predict some of those. But I do think in our experience that Mary Beth particularly, and Gary Sinclair and Steve have been conservative and careful. And anytime we get a chance, we talk about how well planned this is and that the document is continually updated. So I think the public needs to know that this is going on, and we put a lot of effort and attention to it. So thank you for presenting that. That's awesome. And I see that Jeff's here, so it's opportunity time.
Do you want
Oh, yes, take an action. Sorry, I thought we had.
Can I ask one more question? Can I just ask why we're projecting preschool enrollment to be lower?
It's an excellent question.
When we met with Adventure Time this fall, that was based on those projections that they knew. So that the enrollment is what they knew at that time. And that was also taken into consideration when we looked at the tuition for the following year. We have fluctuations where we might have influxes of kids and then down. But we did take that into account when we talked with actually minors.
What were the projections based off of? I think is we knew that there was some sort of projection and that's how you come to it. So what was the projection based off of?
I don't have that information.
Okay, get back to us, or who here would have the answer to that question?
Well, one of the things probably is for 2021, they've got 3-year-old preschool numbers that would go into their 4-year-old, right? So they've got some sort of half of it.
But is there an administrator who does actually do the projection formula that would know? Krista, do you know who would know that?
I would say Ashley Myers.
Probably. I mean, I don't know. I know there was a number, what was the study, demographic study done maybe in 2011 or 12 that did like some long-term projections. I don't know if that's what we're still basing those things on, but Ashley would probably be the first,
Where can Ashley get back to us with that information? Because I think we're all kind of interested in preschool and what's going on with that. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
The only thing I may add is that it's also based on room availability. We're basically maxed out. We do have families on waiting list at this time, so if we have space, we would always be willing and willing to add to that program.
Are the families on the waiting list all resident district families?
I don't think so. I think for some of them, as well.
But the priority is with district students first.
That's correct. Yeah, that's consistent. If they have siblings, then I think we balance ours as well. And already have siblings. Yes.
So may I have a motion to approve these two materials?
Motion to approve the fiscal year 20 key assumptions.
okay.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So that's unanimous. So thank you. Okay. Sorry, Mr. Van Manen. So we'll jump back up.
So, yeah, I'll give it to Jack and Manan the microphone. He's our district auditor.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to come and go over the audit report with you, and thank you for letting us speak. I'll just try and highlight the report as best I can, and if you have questions, just feel free to jump in. I would start with page 3. That's the actual audit report. It gives an unqualified opinion, which means we have a clean opinion as far as the district goes. And then on page 5 is the management discussion and analysis letter, which is written actually by Mary Beth, and it gives you a lot of financial information. So if you read through the MD&A, you'll get a lot of information about the district and its finances. On to page 9, there's a condensed statement of net position that gives you your assets and liabilities of the district as compared to the prior year. I always think this is helpful because it kind of gives you a picture of what it looked like compared to last year. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner of that chart, you can see that your net position increased by 18%. That's a good increase for the district. We go on to page 10. This gives you the condensed change in net position. Gives you the revenue and expenditures of the district as compared to the prior year. So again, a lot of good information. You can see if you look on the right-hand column, kind of halfway down, it says total revenues. The increase there was 4.3% compared to last year. You can see a little bit further down, it says total expenses. They actually decreased by 2.3% compared to last year. So you go on down the net position again, at the end, it's 18% increase. So a good year for the district financially. You go on to page 12. So as I point out your solvency ratio, you can see that it's 13.89%. Anything above 5 is good, and the range of 10 to 15 is really good. So you have a good solvency ratio for the district. Any questions so far? If we go on to page 18 of the report, you can see the exhibit A, which is, again, the statement of net position, which we already looked at, but this is more detailed, gives you more of information. What this report does is show you all of the assets of the district and all the liabilities of the district, kind of in a business, the same way a business would look at it. And so it gives you a good picture of all your assets and liabilities. Again, your net position for the year is 35 million. So that's good, strong. You go on to page 20. This is exhibit B, and again, this is what we've already looked at, but it's a little more detail. Gives you the revenues and expenses of the district. Again, if you look on the bottom there, it says change in net position. For the governmental activities, it was 5.4 million. And for the proprietary type funds, which is the nutrition and daycare and community ed, that went up by 6,000. So positive increase. Exhibit C is on page 21, and that's kind of the governmental format. It's more of a modified cash basis, so it's more of a cash basis type picture of the assets and liabilities of the district. It does not include the capital assets of the district or the long-term debt of the district. And then exhibit E on page 23 gives you the revenues and expenses in a similar format, more of a cash basis type format. Shows all the inflows and outflows of the district. Again, a governmental type format. We go on to page 25. It's the proprietary funds. So again, this is the child care, nutrition, and community ed funds. Shows their assets and liabilities. You can see the child care fund is at a negative net position. Part of that is because of the pension liability that's added in.
Are we on G?
We are on G.
Okay.
Page 25. Am I on the right page? Page.
Oh, yeah.
Exhibit H is on the next page, and it gives you the revenue and expenses of those proprietary funds.
Yeah. Jeff, this is off just one on the numbers, so I'm going to move on to I.
So exhibit I is statement of cash flows. It gives you the cash flow of the proprietary type funds, which are the business type funds. My application.
Yes, just go with what the letter is.
Well, I was gonna, page 29 is actually. So, that's the beginning of the notes for the financials, and that just gives you a lot of information. You want to go through that, and if you have questions about something that has a lot of information that you might want to look at. And I'm going to jump to page 51. That hopefully is a comparison of the actual revenue and expenses compared to budget. So you can see on the far right column, in the expenditures is really where we look at, and the non-instructional programs and the other expenditures both exceeded the budget. So even though you amended the budget, which is back in May, it was still overexpended, but that's hard to project because you're 2 months out from your year end. So it's kind of a hard thing to project, especially with the construction project going. So we do have to comment on that though when we do the meeting. Well, I'll show you that later. Going on to page 58. That's where all the schedules are, and these schedules give you even more detail than the exhibits. So they're supporting exhibits, which we've looked at already. Just gives you more detail, things you might want to look at to see if you want more information about the exhibits. Page 67. That's Schedule 10. It's just always good to look at, I think, just to see the history. Gives you a 10-year history of the district, of revenues and expenses, and just to see where you've been. The next page, on page 68, is the information regarding the federal grants. So it shows the expenditures for the federal grants of the district. In page 76, this is called the Schedule of Findings and Question Costs. This looks at your statutory requirements and whether or not you're in compliance. We had 3 items there that we had to comment on. The certified budget, we talked about that already, how you were overexpended in those 2 areas. So we have to just comment on that, and then it allows you to respond to us. And then the certified enrollment, which is item G, and supplementary weighting, which is J. Those are just minor differences that the district had. Every district pretty much has those, but we do have to comment on. That's kind of a quick overview of the financials. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't. Does anyone else need clarifications? Thank you as always for performing this service and visiting with us.
Thank you, Mary Beth. You really did a great job.
Thank you. You get to go home.
Is there action? I was moved to approve the fiscal 19 audit.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's unanimous. So in the interest of true confessions, Jeff is my cousin. Just a minute. Okay. So we will move to the naming of elementary school 1 proposal.
Basically, very proud. We're proud to bring, we're proud to bring this recommendation. We had a committee of 24 people. We did 2 different surveys to our community, much like the referendum. We wanted to make sure that we got input from our community. And, basically, I'm very proud to say that based on the information we received, the committee and myself are recommending the name of ES number 1 to be Millard A. Olmsted. We further are recommending, as we know that Jensen will be closing in the future, to acknowledge Isabel Jensen, and we would like to use the kind of a larger area, the Commons Cafeteria Courtyard. There's one wall that kind of separates all of those areas. We'd like to honor Isabel in her namesake in that area. And then further, we have a desire to pay tribute to the 2 finalists of the names, Justin S. Martin and Peggy A. Whitson. And we have some artwork that we would like to display somewhere in the front end.
Well, I would, if nobody has any further conversation, I am excited to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the naming committee and name our new school, Millard A. Olmsted Elementary.
Just 2 seconds.
Sorry, question. Hi. I just had a question about the artwork and wondering if there is a process, what the process was for coming up with that artwork and the process, if those are the final photos, or what that will be the final artwork, if there's a process for feedback on that.
We really didn't ask for it at that time. We felt we were going over and above by doing that because we didn't really say we were going to have a, better lack of a better term, a consolation prize for those people.
Yeah.
We felt like we were going over and above. While Justin Martin had a high percent, we felt, hey, because of that high percent, our community had some vested interest in recognizing, and yet then we thought if we're recognizing number 2, the other finalists we should recognize. We only found one poster. It was of Peggy Whitson, one of her quotes, and it really matched perfect with the artwork we're looking for Justin Martin. When people think of, especially around here, the American flag with the blue stripe, and then we would put plaques underneath those as well.
I guess my only question in regards to that would be, when just looking at it, I agree that we should be on, I love the fact that we're honoring both of the suggestions, but I'm wondering if there might be a time for feedback to perhaps see if we can find something a little bit more positive in regards to Justin Martin. My thought process being that maybe turning it more into a positive future prospect of being a police officer versus a remembrance of a tragedy, especially because it's an elementary school, and seeing if there's a way to work around it so that when they walk in and see it, it's not a moment of, oh, it's a moment of, I want to be just like him. I would love to grow up and be a cop situation. I was wondering if there's a possibility to see that in that regard.
It was not our intent to do that. I mean, again, I think just by his name, at least the people in the area know the whole story and are honored. I think the plaque in itself is honoring who he was as a human being. I also think it shows great support for our law enforcement.
Because there is a counter movement to the blue stripe, I almost feel like that's a slap in the face to the people who are part of the counter movement. And we want to respect our law enforcement officers. And I'm not sure if putting something that's a hot button thing right now is the best thing for the future of the district. And that's just my thought. Maybe that comes into the time for feedback Ashley mentioned.
It's more just,
one of the things that I've kind of talked about is like just public art for the building in general. How is that going to be decided? Is there some sort of committee or process to look at like a macro level of all the ways that we can incorporate art into the new building? And I think I think I would agree maybe taking some extra thought process in how to really honor those two in a way that is appropriate for an elementary school. And Peggy Whitson, I mean, we should talk to the science center. They've got a great exhibit on Peggy Whitson, a lot of information about her. I mean, she is a spectacular Iowan. So like, I think you might be able to dig a little bit deeper. I really appreciate the effort of like honoring them, that you went the extra kind of effort to suggest this. I think we would be benefited in the long term if we spend a little bit more time on making that remembrance of, not remembrance of Peggy, she's still alive, but like honoring both of them just a little bit more thoughtful and purposeful. But that said, I think that doesn't that's a separate conversation for the naming.
Yeah.
But I would agree.
Is that something that can be a future agenda item for how we're going to do that?
Yes, I think that is an excellent idea to kind of discuss that, probably include the principal and probably Dina and examine those ideas. I think based on my observations of this group, there was an intense scrutiny of decision-making on what we were going to choose for a name, which was the purpose. And maybe, you know, this was a very honorable afterthought, but maybe that is a good way to think about other features of the building and in a thoughtful way that it all goes together. I don't know, does that make sense? Is that, so maybe we can all kind of get together and think about how we can process
I
it.
like the idea that Judy had of
I think it's an
making
excellent
it a
idea.
district-wide, that's bringing more thoughtful, creative,
Messages.
yeah.
Well, and I think it's important for us though, is this for the families that were voting, or is this gonna be for the children that are attending?
Exactly.
So I think that we really need to think about that aspect, because if it's just honoring the fact that those names were brought up and that we want to show that sort of respect, that's one thing. But this could create a whole instructional component for the children. I mean, that you're going to have to teach the children why these people are in their building. And is that something that we really need to be thinking about? Or are we just going to consider the name of the school and then the other pieces of that can be determined at another time?
Are you saying that, can I repeat what I think I heard you say, that you would just like to, your thought is that we just accept the name for the school and table the other item for this time?
Correct.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure I understood, thank you.
I would recommend accepting the name of the school and the commons area to honor Jensen and Olmsted, the two communities that are most affected.
Would you like to make that?
I would move that we accept naming the new elementary number 1, Millard A. Olmsted, and honor Isabel Jensen in the commons cafeteria and courtyard area.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will have some further discussion.
You throw away your business card?
Okay, thank you. Great input, great discussion. Okay, Dr. Watson. The next recommendation or project that we will be discussing is the replacement of the turf and the renovation of the goalposts tied into it. Does anyone have any questions concerning the data that's in here?
Thank you for the extra information. Yeah, I found that very helpful.
Sarah,
I just have one question.
can you, do you have a mic there? You can,
Yeah.
So, just curious, is really related to
I just put an article.
80% of the rubber
that's existing in the current turf we have now will be recycled and placed back in our turf. The remaining carpet itself will be recycled to the extent that it can be. The rest will be thrown away.
Okay, great. That was what I had read about that. A problem for, what we didn't say. It wasn't going to change.
Thanks for that information. Have any other clarifications?
So I have a question on that, it looks as if there will be some money saved from this project that was originally budgeted, and is there some sort of strategic plan for what is going to happen with that additional money?
That would not be my decision.
I would say we basically use the figures that the architect shares from their experience, and then basically though, kind of like what we do with our 10-year plan, we expect it to be lower than what we actually put out there. That's why almost every year we will be usually a couple million lower than what we have for the expenditures because of projects like that. We never turn right around and say, hey, we got this extra money. I won't say never, but it's rare to really then redesignate it until another project comes up or something else. It gives us kind of that leeway.
Can I give an example of, is this working? Okay.
So last year,
With the projects
that were in here where we had some savings,
Mary Beth was able to identify some things that were under budget and to go to the music department in the district and say, now we've got $15,000 to spend on new instruments. So we were able to kind of turn around pretty quickly and invest that in the music department. So I think in the last year, I just want to call you out for identifying when we do have some of these savings, right, Beth, and being able to kind of reinvest that into something that the students can really use. Oh, I move to approve the turf construction contract award. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. Thank you. Thanks for all the work. Okay, we are moving on to a proposed vehicle purchase for, it's primarily food service, but also it's a district vehicle to haul bigger objects back and forth between the buildings. Do we have any questions on these proposals?
I know.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick question. Did you, are Stevie on it? Hi, quick question. When looking, is this working? When looking at the prices, did you contact the dealerships to see about are doing down, or, and did we get different numbers than what we saw, or is this the final?
Those are the numbers that we got. We had one dealer that was, they presented before the deadline to get the one in there, but they were higher than the Susan bid. So these are, so to try to get apples to apples, these are just the cab and chassis. We're still gonna have to upfit with the drive end boxes and the lift on the tailgate lift. But the prices you have are what we get them for. And they're all really close, so we got some pretty good bids.
Thank you. I just want to double check just because of the Chevrolet one just came in and it looked like it was just looked online. So I just want to make sure you actually talk to someone to see if we can talk to them. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And to be clear, these are a bid process, so we do not negotiate prices.
Okay.
We get, usually one under, I think, you'll know, being a school district, public school, we get special rates that are really lower than that public citizen can get.
Perfect.
The pricing was as expected because the Susan builds the Chevy truck.
Yeah.
So of course it's a little bit higher. The Hilo came in and it's a different truck because it's a diesel and it's made with cabin comfort. We have those 20 degree below zero days and we go out and fuel's popsicle. So your trucks don't start. So we're trying to steer away from the diesel. If it had been an outstanding price, then yeah, maybe we would have gone with the diesel, but that's why we kind of steer away from that. Plus, the salesman I was dealing with, up and quit in the middle of it and kind of dropped the ball on pricing, so we didn't get it till late, so.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Move to approve that purchase of the class 4 food service tablet. Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous, thank you. Okay. So now we are moving into the recommended replacement of the boiler at the middle school. Boiler heat exchanger. Boiler heat exchanger. When
Basically,
you're
what,
done with that one, can you come on in here?
well, we talked about this, we need a vestibule on each one of those doors, because every time we open the doors, 20 degrees heat.
I know.
Right out.
That was my world.
On the boilers, these are the original air-cooled boilers that were purchased, 1998. Several years ago, we had a failure in the boiler fluid condensate drain system, which basically allowed some fairly acidic water to end up at the bottom of these things. The first one failed in 2014. We found this one leaking while we did the boiler inspections this summer. Basically replacing these is going to make these boilers viable for many, many more years. It's unfortunate it happened, but we got all we're looking for when those systems fail, so we shouldn't have a problem here.
Was this projected on here?
Yeah, probably not, since it just came up this summer.
Yeah, we had the one go down for how long was that one down? We found out we're in big trouble with them. It wasn't in the last one went down, we had issues.
Oh, we had a couple of boilers here at the high school that,
Sorry, my apologies, I was jumping back to the truck in my mind.
oh, okay.
I was looking for something else, so.
Oh,
I'm way off,
That
sorry.
would probably be covered under the, standard operating and maintenance, because we're public.
Okay. Oh, okay, so coming out of that pool, thank you. That was a question I had, so. Any other questions?
Move to approve the replacement of the boiler heat exchanger.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. So four of us attended the School Board Association last month on Thursday, May Day, and Judy also attended the delegate assembly to help select the priorities, the legislative priorities for the organization, which is an important function for the organization. So would you like to start?
Sure, so ISB is our main lobbying entity. They lobby on our behalf. They're not our only one, we can also lobby, and our administrators and board members in the past have participated in efforts which I think can be sometimes more effective. But they, before that, we approved their fee increases. They raised their fees to schools 2%. I voted against it just because I felt like it's a lot of money that we're paying, but that's okay, they won. So our fees will be going up 2% to ISB. The biggest lobbying issue that they've been focusing on the past few years has been SAVE. So since that was extended last year, the priorities have changed this year. And sometimes in these discussions, the balance between the interests of the districts can be really stark. When you look at rural and urban school districts, but there was a lot of consensus around increase the supplemental state aid than what it has been in the past, being a priority. Obviously, that's something I'm concerned about. I think 2% in our key assumptions is still a little optimistic. given recent history, but we'll see. But that is one of their priorities. Preschool funding, so one of their lobbying priorities this year will be supporting an increase in funding from the current weighting of 0.5 to 0.1 full-time equivalencies for full-day preschool and transportation for 4 and 5-year-olds, for students to attend the statewide voluntary preschool program. Mental health is a key priority. There was a lot of consensus around that, which supported legislation that would do things like expanding loan forgiveness programs to include mental health professionals who agree to work in schools, reimbursement by Medicaid and private insurers for in-school services, in-school and telehealth access for students to mental health professionals. There's really a backing of mental health services all across the state. So I think that should be a priority of ISB this year, and any way that we can help support them as school board members and sharing how it's important to us, I think can be helpful. And then the last priority is supporting a school formula that equalizes per pupil funding and reflects actual costs for special education services. There's only so much we can do about that on the state level, but looking at that could be helpful. So those were in line a little bit with some of the things we talked about as a board for our priorities. One of the things I would say is if we can, on Tuesday, January 28th, it's the ISP Day at the Capitol. I know our administrators have been great about going in past years. I think as a board, it'd be wonderful if some of us could go up there to help share stories of why supplemental state aid hasn't necessarily been sufficient, or we can't keep operating under budget over the next few years at less than inflated rates, or whatever we think is important to share to our state legislators. So that's January 28th. And I'm sure Mary Beth could help sign any of us up through ISB if we wanted to participate. So that was kind of the report of the delegate assembly. Any questions? I think there was a question a few months ago about our advocacy and working with ISB and relying on them to be kind of our advocacy arm. And I think as a board, we've got some autonomy if we want to say, let's not just rely on what they're doing. Let's try to have a vocal and active presence in advocating for legislative change beyond these issues that we feel like the district needs. I think that we can be the best, some of the best spokespeople. These lobbyists work for a lot of entities, and they try to say this judiciously, but this is their profession, and for us, we're volunteers, and I think we can be really effective lobbyists. So that's kind of a passion of mine, so I'd be interested in talking to this board about how we can do that effectively over the next year. I know some school districts have their own legislative priorities and their own advocacy committees and things like that. I'm not necessarily advocating for a particular solution, just that if anyone else is interested in getting more involved, it's obviously passionate.
That's it.
Thank you for doing that. Not everyone does it with that kind of passion. So we're glad that you attended and participated. You want to go next?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm actually gonna obnoxiously talk about 2 of the different sessions I went to. The first one was hosted by the Riverside School District, their school board and their superintendents. The big takeaways, it was all about how to get a message for your district, focus on that message, and different key takeaways to make a meeting run better. One of the big things that I thought was really important was that they specifically said we should focus on 1 of the 3 goals that you said and more is hard to accomplish. And the way they run their meetings I thought was really interesting. each meeting they have a presentation by a different section of their school district, or even by any people from outside of their school district come in and present on a topic. They have a set of questions that they give out to everyone, so each presentation is in the same format, and they give them plenty of time to get that information so everyone can read it beforehand, so you can get good questions. They do key takeaways at the end of every one of their meetings from each of the members, so that we can all sort of get on the same page. And they do 3 common messages to share with the public at the end of it. Because one of the big issues that every school district has is getting their particular info out to the residents in their district. And so what they do is they have their 3 key takeaways, like their 3 common messages, and then they all just push it out. And it seems to work really well for them, so it's just something that I really enjoy listening to. And then the very last thing that I'm going to during the day, the executive director of the Please Pass the Love project, which works on mental health care, gave a final presentation. And it was it's basically giving a background to really appreciate how mental health care in our school districts can make a difference. And it was, a lot of the talking was about building sustainable systems instead of just isolated trainings, so we can plan ahead for an issue instead of only reacting to an issue. It was incredibly powerful. She had a really interesting backstory that led to her just being a Catholic. She's actually a current school board member in West Des Moines School District. So if we had any future questions, I think she'd be a really good person to speak to.
Yeah,
Okay, so I attended a finance, which was quite interesting just to get to understand where you can appropriate funds and where funding sources are coming from in and out. But I think the most interesting session that I attended was the superintendent from public schools was comparing data from the last 10 years on equity within sports and looking at low poverty, free and reduced lunch rates compared with their athletics, and how they're really advocating to try to not just go by the size of your school to base on where your athletics might be playing in. So you might not be, you might be as large as a 4A or 5A school, but if your skill level is more on a 1A, then you would be playing with 1A. So it was very interesting data. I analyzed quite a bit of it. I really enjoyed listening to how they talked about the changes even in our demographics over the last 10 years across the metro area. So I think it was enlightening, and for us as board members to truly think about that equity amongst all of our district athletics to ensure that everyone's getting those same opportunities.
As a Roosevelt grad, I feel that so hard. I'm so glad that they're looking at that. It's such an interesting topic.
Yeah, the data is very powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very nicely done. I just made a few notes. I also attended the mental health. It was extremely powerful, and I think we as a board probably need to revisit that with her in a work session. It's very well done. So Dr. Ken Robinson was the main speaker. I'm just doing a very broad overview. I mean, he's basically talking about standardization and assessment focus and getting away from the linear nature of education in the United States, where we focus so much on numbers, started with IQ scores and classifying people versus really valuing each individual and thinking way outside the box. And the focus for us, I put the 3 little stars by that, was that our job is to create a climate of possibility and develop conditions for growth. The opposite of standardization, I think probably in the bigger picture, there is a swing away kind of from all the testing and the assessment focus, but nobody knows for sure what direction it's going. It was just remarkably empowering for him to talk about, spend time on the people, not the numbers. And, you know, he is highly respected and he has a lot of experience internationally, so it was very empowering. So, thanks to the district for letting us go.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And thanks to everybody for being willing to share. Okay. So we are now moving into the consent agenda. If I may have a motion to move these items forward.
Motion to open the consent agenda.
Okay. Do we have any clarifications, questions?
So I think, with regards to the email, we received explaining the rebranding and things of that nature, I really appreciate the elaborated explanation. That makes a lot of sense to me. However, I do recall the meeting several months ago where we authorized administration to be able to spend up to $25,000. And when I had voted that way, I was under the impression that that was to just approve change orders and things that might come up on an emergency basis for the construction project we're working on, and that it wasn't an all-out blanket approval for administration authority level has now been upped to $25,000. And so if we need to go in and either vote, re-specify, or have another conversation, I think maybe I would like to just even have a conversation, maybe not at this time, but what was that vote intended to be, and if we need to take another vote to re-specify, because like I said, when I voted, and maybe this was incorrect, but I voted thinking it was only for emergency type change orders. And I don't know if anyone else felt that way that was here.
One note of clarity, we actually approved two different policies that you're referring to. We did a change/build order of 25,000. We also, prior to that, did I think it's called bidding and purchasing, which is the 25,000. The state level for that is much higher. So we bumped that up, I think, a couple months prior to the change order. So you're actually talking about two different policies.
Okay, I guess maybe some clarification is needed because I didn't think, I guess that I was surprised to see administration have the authority to spend $20,000 on marketing and rebranding without it ever coming before the board or having the board know anything about it. And I think that's my concern is how did that happen? Is that something that we should expect and is very commonplace, or you know, just to expect these large types bills? I don't know. I guess I'm just looking for a little more answer.
Mary Beth, what's the state code say about that? So that good policy update is now compliant with state. I just like to go out to our school website, and under business procedures, we have a little slideshow. And in that slideshow, it has a graphic that says, like superintendent approval, superintendent plus board. And it just, I think it's a very quick visual of like, it shows you the dollar amounts that have to be, and the different thresholds to be approved. So if you want to ever refer to that, we did update that as the board policy changed to be in compliance with Iowa code. It's out there and it's a quick visual.
Okay, so the board voted that way to up the authority so that we were in compliance with Iowa code. When we did not have the authority level up, we were not in compliance with Iowa
Right, we
code.
were actually below
Okay.
what Iowa code had, and so we were outdated, and so we're in the process of updating that policy. We brought it up to speed. They had raised that a while before we did.
That was a perfect explanation. Thank you, Mary Beth.
You bet.
I have a question just about the rebranding, just the bills list. And this is, it's just in your explanation, there was a business that we were working with, but the check was cut to the individual personally. Is that just a,
I think that's the owner.
He's the owner.
oh, okay.
Mhm.
So is there, because I think you include the documentation for the bid that he put in, then did we sign some sort of agreement?
right? So there's a services agreement
Okay,
that in detail lists out all the deliverables and expectations, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that kind of contract, the superintendent has authority, it doesn't take board president.
Correct.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
correct.
Okay, so when we approve this, are we, the $10,000 in the bill list, are we tacitly approving a contract that we haven't seen?
We don't need to. Right?
Or it doesn't see every contract that
Because it's under.
goes to an engineering copy machine. We have, there's lots and lots of contracts that we have that don't necessarily come to your signature until it's over the top.
I think we're just I think it's just that it was so new to us and it's such a big bill, and I think we feel maybe that we would have liked to have more transparent. That's how I feel, that I would have liked to have known more about this plan and what was unfolding. That's how I feel.
And I probably would agree with that. When we see this $10,000 paid out to an individual, the bill list, it doesn't pop. So it did get our attention. So I thank you for the clarification, and I would welcome all of us to go into the code and get some clarification on that. But do we have any other? Go ahead.
Well, I was just, can we ask Steve just like maybe for a little bit of information prior to that?
I think that you certainly can. The biggest challenge we have is with all of the documents and all of the things that we purchase. Again, well, this is 20,000, the board thought it was 10. At what point do we have to not continue to move forward with projects because we were guessing if the board needs it? The piece we do have for consistency is the board policy. That's what we've always followed. So the
Well, I
challenge
wasn't
is,
really questioning anything that you did.
I just mean as far as how, we don't know what to bring the board, what not to.
Sure. No, I was just thinking, it sounds like some people are uncomfortable and we've sometimes had communication concerns amongst us. So I was just thinking maybe like, just a little, like, just for the sake of like some of the conversations, like, a little bit of information before on the, on the front side rather than, because I don't have a particular feeling.
And I would love to do that, I just don't know what you want information on. I mean, when you look at a bills list, so much, we have 800 items listed.
Well, what I'm hearing from most everyone is just, and I'm sorry.
No, I think the easiest way to look at that would just say, if we're, specifically in this case, we're giving that money to one person saying, saying, oh, no, it's just the rest of the company, it's just something. And
I think it was going to be amount as well, is what I was hearing.
I think that would help, but I think that's what we're getting at.
Well,
Clarification of like, I don't think it needs to be for all items, I just think it's ones that when you read over the whole list, if it pops funny. Because I think when you read it over, one or two will make you go, oh, I wonder what this one actually for, and I think that's
And
it.
partially, I mean, we don't mind doing that, but again, so I don't have to guess what you're wondering about, please just send us an email, say, hey, what is this about, we'll be happy to share it with you.
Well, yeah.
But
I
I
just
would,
won't know what, we have 7 board members, that's the challenge.
what I would recommend, and I think, I don't know if anybody else, so, but like things like you mentioned, copy machines and contracts like that, we know all that things, those types of things are going on, but we don't know that we're embarking on a new endeavor. And I think that this is something, and I think that's the thing, is, okay, we're taking on a new endeavor, so let's let the board in on this. I think maybe that's a little bit, right, like the board already knows there's copying costs and things like that. We don't need to talk about it. But embarking on a new adventure, I think, is maybe limited how it happens.
And I just, to be
I
clear,
felt like I couldn't.
do you have a special place I should put that, or is the Friday update okay, or, because again, it won't be necessarily asking for the board's approval, so where do you want that?
I think the
Friday update is perfect.
I think you did a great job of this kind of thing in the future. I like
Certainly.
to know that I should just send you an email.
Or it could,
That helps.
could formally be in the information, but not necessarily for future, which is, you could expand on that. It's an information.
We'll certainly try to get that.
No, I appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other?
I just want to make one comment. I absolutely love the new club application. It sounds like the coolest club, and I wish we would have had it when I was growing up, and I'm so excited to see it. Oh, privilege.
Did you hear her?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have my mic on. Yes.
Yeah, you want to hear that. Okay. Any other questions?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Well, you don't have to motion, we're just going to vote. Okay, so all in favor of adopting the consent agenda as it is written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Do we have any other items that we want to discuss?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We did have an additional item that we are going to take under advisement. It's a proposal for tentatively a staff ad. We're either going to take that up at a special meeting or address it in all likelihood, possibly on January 6th before our work session, where we can do some formal approval, because it didn't make this agenda. And so I think that we don't want to get into a habit of not following our protocol. So we will be addressing that either at a special session or the 6th, or at worst, the 13th. Is that clear? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything else?
Mary Beth Hayes of Verbiage, would you like a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And special request for like 5-minute break before, okay. Motion to go into closed session per Iowa Code 21.5I to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, or discharge is being considered when necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to that individual's reputation and that individual request to close session.
So,
Let's take a 5-minute break first and then we'll go.
yes, and I might point out that Steve has formally requested a closed session for this.
We'll take a 5-minute break now.
Okay? And that we are going to be moving to another room, and the first session then is